In this special free hit team selection video, I'm going to go into depth about the best Liverpool triple up, the best Arsenal triple up, and the 4 remaining outfield slots. I think the 2 defenders are pretty easy, but as for the 2 attackers, I can play a 3-4-3 formation or a 3-5-2 formation. There's a lot of midfielders and forwards to pick from. Either way, I won't be opting for more than 3 defenders. I want a nice high ceiling in attack. Building from the back, I've opted for the Palace goalkeeper, which is Johnston. They face Everton at home. Now, the reason I've gone for this is because I've got a Liverpool triple up in the outfield, along with an Arsenal triple up in the outfield. They've got the 2 best clean sheet odds, and in 3rd place for the clean sheet odds is Crystal Palace. It did only cost me 4.4 mil, so that allows me to invest more of my budget in the rest of my team. Funnily enough, my backup goalkeeper costs $1 million more. It's Pope against Spurs at home. Now, the reason I picked my bench keeper is the exact same reason why I picked my first team keeper. It's the clean sheet odds. Obviously, I can't have the Liverpool or Arsenal keeper, and now I can't have the Palace keeper, and the team with the 4th highest clean sheet odds is Newcastle. You'll see soon that the team that I've picked allows me to get the optimal backup goalkeeper, but if you can't afford him, don't worry about that. The 5th highest clean sheet odds belong to Leicester, and their goalkeeper Everson is only 3.8 mil. In defence, I've got Trent against Forest at home. I don't think any plays essential in FPL, but this game week is as close as it's going to get. I say that because when we pair 2 players with Salah, if they're going to be attackers, that 3rd player is going to have really low expected minutes. None of them have high enough expected minutes as it is. And to be honest with you, Trent has technically been playing in midfield if you look at his heat map. He managed to get 2 assists in his last match as well. So not only does he have the attacking output of a midfielder, he gets 6 points for his goals, and he's got a route to get a clean sheet as well because he's a defender. Don't forget that Liverpool have got one of the highest clean sheet odds this game week, a 53% chance of obtaining a clean sheet, which means it's likely, and don't forget he's very good for bonus when he's playing in that attacking position. Next up in defence is Anderson against Everton at home, and you might have already noticed that I've got a Palace double up in defence, but like I mentioned earlier, they are the 3rd highest for the clean sheet odds, and my last defender I don't think you'll be surprised by is Trippier against Spurs at home. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is that Newcastle have got the 4th highest clean sheet odds. That is against Spurs at home. It's not the easiest of fixtures, but Newcastle's defence is better than Palace's, and we know how attacking Trippier is, so he compensates for that small difference in the clean sheet odds. I did actually consider Anderson's attacking threat when I was picking that Palace defender, and he's got the highest underlying stats out of any Palace defender this season. He's got 0.1 XGI per 90 minutes, which is decent, and of course he's better than his colleagues. You can have a look on FBref for that one. These numbers were for the whole season. I didn't want to use a small sample size like when Hodgson came in or something like that. That's because the small sample size carries a lot of variance. It's not really a good indicator. As usual, I never consider ownership in any of my decisions, so I didn't pick Trippier because he's going to be highly owned, and I didn't go for a Palace double up in defence because it's differential. As you might have already noticed throughout the video, I do like Palace because of the clean sheet odds. I actually considered a triple up in defence. The reason for that is because if there's a clean sheet, you're relying on less outcomes for success. So say, for example, you'll get 12 clean sheet points, you'll probably get some bonus in there as well, and that's only on one outcome, one team getting a clean sheet, but I did prefer Trippier over that 3rd defender. Speaking of which, my last Palace defender, I hope I pronounced this right, is Gueye. He's the 2nd player on my bench, and my last defender is the last player on the bench, is Soufal against Bournemouth away. You'll see soon why I've not picked any Arsenal players or Liverpool players in defence apart from Trent, but moving on to midfield, of course it's the player that I mentioned earlier, it's Salah against Forest at home. If essential was a thing, he'd be the most essential player this game week. He's definitely going to be my captain. All the data points towards him as being the best captain, so there won't be a best captain video this game week. Now, the 3rd Liverpool slot is difficult. You can see I didn't go for Robertson, and the reason for that is because he's not really taking up the attacking positions that he used to do, and I want a nice high ceiling in attack against Forest at home. Yeah, the clean sheet odds are there, but there are some players that can really open up that defence. I want that higher ceiling. To be fair, I wouldn't blame you for picking Robbo. He's got a high floor because of his high clean sheet odds, and then obviously the players in attack haven't got the highest of expected minutes. Another reason why you might want to pick him is because of the lack of the alternative defenders, and I don't blame you for that either, but for me, like I always mention, I like that nice high ceiling. It could really catapult me up the ranks. At first, I was strongly considering Jota because of how well he played in his last match. He got 2 goals and an assist, but now I'm thinking about it, he was a forward playing on the wing, which is negatively out of position, whilst you've got Gakpo who's a midfielder playing up front, positively out of position. And if you look at the underlying stats, you're waiting for the fact that Gakpo gets 5 points for a goal, Jota only gets 4 points, and Gakpo gets the potential clean sheet point, which is pretty likely this game week. Gakpo's weighted underlying stats are by far more promising. Another thing is, if you look at the expected minutes of all the attackers, apart from Salah, Gakpo's got the highest. It's only 68, but it's still higher than his teammates. Jota only has 55 expected minutes. That's because he faces more competition against Darwin and Diaz. Gakpo's competition is only really Firmino. He played 80 minutes in the last match and 90 minutes in the match before that. Next up is my first Arsenal player. It's Saka against Southampton at home. If I couldn't captain Salah this game week, Saka would be my captain, therefore he's going to be my vice captain, and based on that information, you can see that I value him as the best Arsenal player. The main reason for that is the penalty duty advantage. Arteta recently came out and confirmed that he's still on pens. Of course, I wouldn't be saying all of this if his non-penalty underlying stats were poor, but that's not the case. All of the Arsenal attackers have got really good underlying stats. The second favourite Arsenal player is Martinelli. That's because of the positions that he takes up, combined with his expected minutes. I feel like he's got the best combination of both. Then you look at the last two players that have got to choose from Arsenal. You've got Odegaard, who's got the expected minutes, but even though he's got higher expected minutes, his underlying stats aren't quite as good as what Jesus has been producing. With Odegaard having that clean sheet point potential and the extra point per goal scored, but with the lower underlying stats, I'd say he's got a higher floor but a lower ceiling, which means that Jesus has got a lower floor but a higher ceiling, and you know that I like to go for that explosive potential, therefore I'll be picking Jesus in my team. Obviously, if we get the leaked lineups and he's not starting, I will have to shuffle my team around and I will go for Odegaard probably, but if I see that Trossard is starting and he's out of position up front, I'll be very tempted by him. He'll be a really good differential. I wouldn't be picking him because of his ownership. I just think he'd be a really good option in that position. You get plenty of chances. So here's some advice for you. With Arsenal being the early kickoff, there might be some leaked team news, and if you go to my Twitter page, have a look at my pinned tweet. I've created a Twitter list with all the reliable FPL leaked team news accounts, so if anything comes through, you'll get it there straight away, and you can adapt immediately straight before the deadline. There's no fake team news in there either. Another thing is that this is recorded before the press conferences. If there are any changes to availability of players, I will announce that on Twitter in my team reveal. Make sure you're following me on there. Last thing, if you've made it to this point in the video, you're clearly finding it informative, so if you've not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of these videos. Before I have a look at my last couple of attackers, I did consider Gabriel or White in defence, but I don't think it's worth it because I don't really want to put a cap on how many points I could get from that fixture. I was left with 2 attacker slots to fill in the first team and 1 attacker slot on the bench. I considered 3 midfielders, Eze against Everton at home, Maddison against Wolves at home, and Andreas Pereira against Leeds at home. I don't think there's much to split the 3, but process of elimination, the first player I wanted to get rid of was Andreas against Leeds at home. Don't get me wrong, he does face a poor defence at home, but that can be said about the other 2 players as well. To be fair, he's been threatening in front of goal recently, and he is a set-piece specialist, so I don't think he's a bad option. But Fulham without Mitrovic, I'm sure this form's going to run out sometime soon. It's just got to, and they're on the beach as well. They're up against Leeds, who are fighting to stay up. That's going to be a difficult fixture at this point in the season, regardless of how poor their defence has been this season. You might be surprised by this. It goes slightly against the grain. When I did a poll on Twitter, I'm actually going to pick Maddison over Eze. This decision has actually surprised myself. My initial thought was to go for Eze. That's because Everton's defence has been poorer than Wolves this season, and Eze has been playing better than Maddison recently as well. First, I'll touch up on the performances of both players, then I'll return to the opponents. I've been trying my best to avoid the recency bias. Obviously, Eze's had a good output recently, Maddison hasn't, but if you look at a large enough sample size to compare these 2 players, Maddison's non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 minutes is 0.54, whilst Eze's is only 0.36, therefore Maddison's is more sustainable. Another thing to consider is what the teams are playing for. Maddison's team Leicester are in the relegation zone, and their opponents Wolves are 7 points above the drop. They're almost safe. When it comes to Palace, they're out of the relegation fight. They're playing against Everton, who are joint in the relegation zone on points. That'll be a difficult fixture at this point in the season. Whilst Leicester are fighting, they really need the best player Maddison to step up there. I still wouldn't blame you for picking Eze because his form has been good, and to be fair, Wolves could beat Leicester because Leicester have been poor this season, and Palace could trench Everton because Everton's defence has been poor as well. It's unpredictable which way it could go, but I prefer Maddison for the reasons that I've given. I was left with 5 forwards fighting for the last 2 forward slots, one in the first team and one on the bench. If I was told that all of the players were guaranteed 90 minutes, Isak would be straight in my first team against Spurs at home. Unfortunately, that's not the case. He's got the lowest expected minutes of the 5 players, so whilst he's got the highest ceiling, he's also got the lowest floor, therefore he won't be one of my forwards. I've mentioned floors and ceilings that much in this video, it doesn't even sound like I'm talking about FPL anymore, it sounds like I'm building a house. The only thing I've not mentioned is a wall, but I will be discussing that next game week if Jesus gets subbed off at half time, because I will be throwing myself at it. Anyway, back to the serious talk. The next player to be eliminated is Kane against Newcastle away. Yeah, we know what he's capable of, but that's a really difficult fixture. Not only that, I wouldn't like to own Kane and Trippier in the same team. That would really limit the amount of points I could get. This is the bit where it gets really tricky. I've got Solanke against West Ham at home, Tony against Villa at home, or in the same fixture, Watkins against Brentford away. The form that Solanke's been in has been impressive, and he has got a decent fixture, but don't forget, yet again, West Ham could get dragged into this relegation battle, so it might not be as easy as it first looks at a glance, that fixture. He was very close to getting in my first team, but he doesn't quite make the cut. He is the first player on my bench, and he's only 5.5 mil, so he's allowed me to invest more in my squad, and he's a very good 12th player to come on if I need him. So as you can see how I've structured my bench, the first outfield player to step in offers reliable insurance. The second player on the bench and my first defender, if I need him, I'm quite happy with him. Then when it comes to my last defender on the bench, he's technically my 15th man. It's not too bad of a fixture against Bournemouth away, but I've got him because he's really cheap. He's allowed me to upgrade my goalkeeper. It has been a bit of a sacrifice, but as my 15th man, my third outfield player on the bench, can't really see him coming on. It's much more likely that my goalkeeper will need to step in. My last forward and the last player to complete the team hasn't blanked in 12 matches. He's been banging in goals for fun. And to be fair, the match that he did blank, he only played for 31 minutes. The 3 games before that where he played more than 66 minutes, he didn't blank in any of those either. So 15 games in a row where he played more than 66 minutes, he hasn't blanked once. That's not even form, that's pure consistency and quality. It's Ollie Watkins against Brentford away. Just be careful not to fall for the recency bias with Solanke. Yeah, he's played well in his last match, but before that he blanked 2 matches in a row where he played both of the full matches. Another thing to consider, not only has Watkins overperformed his underlying stats this season, with Solanke underperforming his underlying stats, that's in terms of XG anyway. If you look at the non-penalty underlying stats for this season, Watkins has got 0.56 expected goal involvement per 90 minutes, Solanke's on 0.12 less than that. If you need any advice for your FPL team, leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you.